Hi everyone, this is the Raven's Librarian, and I will be discussing episode 7 of the One Piece live action adaptation. I'll be focusing mainly on just my personal musings on the changes and how this version compares to the anime and the manga. I'll try to keep comments regarding future episodes out of the discussion, but please bear that in mind that I am going at this from a comparison, so there will be semi-spoilers for the adaptation. In this episode, we focus a lot on the introduction of Nami's backstory, the relationship with Arlong and the people of Cocoa Village, and the added stuff involves Garp continuing his inclusion into this version of the story, and a few added things here and there in the flashback, well, mainly in the present, not really. The flashback stays out of it. For the most part, sticks consistent to the other version. The inclusion of, for example, in the last episode, we, at the end, set up that the way that Luffy and the Straw Hats are going to catch up to Nami and find out where Arlong is having kept the disembodied head of Buggy the Clown. Really? The bat can't fly? So, with the disembodied head, Buggy decides, alright, I'm tagging along, and as I guessed in the previous episode, they basically agree, alright, we'll help you get back your body, which we confirm is in fact in Arlong Park later on when Nami's there. They help him get his body back, he helps them get to the island to see Nami. So the episode starts with that, and then cuts to Nami already there, with this splicing her flashback in between scenes, establishing her motivation and the reason why she's there. So her flashback involves her sister and Belle Mare. The flashback basically does what it's, like the other versions. The only real changes are some parts are done in different orders, and some parts are done by different people. So Belle Mare's backstory is given by herself to Nami in this version, whereas in the other version I believe it's the head of the village with the pinwheel. I like that they kept the pinwheel. I appreciate tiny touches like that where for the most part characters share like the same aesthetic as their other counterparts from the other mediums. Even the ones that look like completely ridiculous, like the simple fact that the Marine officer is supposed to have like a rat face, and here they're like, alright, you're gonna wear whiskers and we're gonna give you 2 mouse ears. It's like, does it look real? No. Does it matter? No. It's like, but we're doing it because that's how you look in the other version. But even like not so comedically obvious stuff, like just how they make sure to give the characters very similar wardrobes whenever possible. Like the only exception being, I think, the main team, the Straw Hats, do change wardrobe a bit more than they did in the original. But it's a nice touch because it's consistent with their tendency to change clothing in between each arc. So here they have them change every so often throughout the episodes. So it's a minor change and one that I think is for the better. And back to the episode, the inclusion of tiny things like, okay, so we show Buggy's body is in Arlong Park. Arlong Park looks different, but it's an obvious difference where it's like in the other version, it's more like a resort. Arlong Park is just this big open area with a pool in the middle because fishermen, and why the hell not? It's in a port. But we also have, in this version, there's like, with the Buggy thing, it's like there's a game there. Like I assume it's like the right term was like parks and theme parks. Like it's not the right one, but it's like they have shooting ranges or throw darts, something in the background where Buggy's body's being tied up like a prize. It's one of the prizes, and that area is just kept there for the use. And I just find it interesting, that choice of change for the theme for the Arlong Park place. We don't really get wide shot of Arlong Park, so I don't know if we'll get one in the last episode. So it's hard to say whether or not they were able to be faithful to that version of Arlong Park in comparison to the other places. Like I said, one of the most impressive things for me, at least, in this live action has been the sets. I think the designers did a really great job of doing most of the sets really well, and both doing homages to the original versions, but also giving it a very impressive, iconic look to the places that they visit. So even when they're not different for the sake of, budget or for the sake of limitation. It's different because they want every place the Straw Hats visit to stand out in the viewer, and I think that's a really nice thing. Even Cocoa Village, which purposely goes for a, run-down village that's being, bled dry by Arlong. It's not an excuse to be like, okay, we're gonna have like 2 shacks, one for Nami, one for the other character, and that's just gonna be the village. No, they actually bother to lay out the place, even if it's more for, creating a set to get a scene done, especially when the ending implies that might be the place where they end up battling. It could be, that could just be a mislead and then setting up Arlong Park, but still, the inclusion of that there is meant to serve not just, hey, look at this place looking exactly like the other version. It also now has to serve a function for the show of, okay, we need people to be able to fight here. It's the same thing with Baratie and the other locations. They have to find ways of adapting the places, but not just one-to-one, because then they're like, okay, but how are we going to have like real people, physical people, like fight in these like super cramped spaces? I'd say like the one place they shifted the most for that reason was in the mansion in Syrup Village, because they were like, yeah, no, we're gonna have most of the events happen here, so we're gonna need people to focus on here. Anyway, I'm rambling on now. Back to the episode. The scenes with Garp and Seth are one of the coolest additions, because it has basically 2 old curmudgeons just reminisce about the old days. And in that conversation, they both, A, reference things for the show's sake, B, reference things that don't change but, are nice for fans of the anime and the manga, because it's called, the references. And they explain sort of like the different viewpoints between the two, while at the same time what they share in common. It's, again, the perspective of the older generation, even from 2 extreme, criminal lawmen, how they can at the same time have similar understanding with each other. The whole reference of the longer the hunt, when he, like, Seth makes the reference to the boar he caught, and Garp acknowledges, it's like, oh yeah, it's like, the longer you have to chase something, the more thrill there is to that. And as well as with the parental part of them both having people that they care a lot about. One felt the need to physically push the person away, Sanji, but like it was to help him chase his dream, whereas Garp feels that he needs to stop his kid, Luffy, from chasing his dream, because in his mind it's the wrong dream, and also he's thinking of the consequences, which is definitely like a common acknowledged problem of like the youth, like speaking as a semi-middle-aged adult now. When you're young, you're thinking of what you want to change, what you want to achieve, and you're not necessarily thinking all that much on what might happen if you mess up. Now, we know that at least this version is definitely aware of the consequences, but we already have that in the previous episode with the conversation with about Zoro, which is the whole, oh yeah, I don't want him to die, but I'm not going to stop him from chasing his dream. That's obviously going to be a very for some people, a very absurd, divisive thing. It's, the difference between being a dreamer and being, chasing one's dream, and being insane or dumb, where it's not always accepting consequences or not being practical about that. But again, do we also know that it's a difference between a criminal, lawman, parent, grandparent? Yeah, you get it. And cut back to the stuff with the Straw Hats back in Cocoa Village with Nami and stuff. There's things in the change with Nami's backstory that I'm not sure I understand what the motive was for these changes. So now in this version, her sister had no idea what she was up to based on the way they interacted at the end, which is like, why? It's even debatable, like in the other version, why she didn't tell the village. But you could, again, agree that's all based on the whole Arlong needs to keep up an image, so Nami assumes it's better for nobody to know, that we're all making a deal to buy out the village. But, like, why wouldn't she tell her sister? It's obviously it's always going to come down to, it probably just boils down to they think it makes for a better story if she had to keep this all to herself. But I don't know if that detracts from just having her have a good sister relationship. Like, I don't know if there's really anything to gain from having her feel like she couldn't have her sister in on the secret. It's one of those where it's like, it might be overreaching, overanalyzing, but it's a difference in itself that makes me go, was this really necessary? It's different from, like, say, the changes they do to Arlong's character, where it's less, the version of Arlong from the manga and this stuff, I believe he would probably think similar to this version. I don't think this is like a completely different perspective. Rather, I think the change is more, this version of Arlong feels the need to verbalize his anger a lot more than the version that we see in the anime and the manga, where he has all the same thoughts, but he's gotten so jaded and poisoned over time that he doesn't have the compulsion to be like, alright, let me explain to you why I feel prejudiced against humans. No, because he's so fed up with things by the point we meet him that he's just all in on the Fishman supremacy stuff and wasting time with basically telling other people, including Fishmen and other humans, why he wants you to think and believe that Fishmen are superior. The other version of Arlong would have seen it as a waste of time. It's not that he doesn't think those things, or that he at one point had that emotional baggage and that anger to constantly call out the BS from other people. It's just, again, I think the other version was done with the whole explanation part of his supremacy dogma. But I do believe that the change is done because they want it to be more understood by the audience that this is a specious racial problem within the setting. Because in the original versions, we meet Arlong separate from everything else. So, sorry about the motorcycle in the background. So, we meet him in the first, without the context of the world building. There's no implication of, like, stigma or prejudice against Fishmen. It's just, this guy, Arlong, just showed up here, terrorized the villagers, and he's the bad guy. And he brings all the supremacy, Fishmen are better narrative himself. But without the context of the rest of the One Piece setting, you just assume, okay, so he's just a fascist bigot who just thinks that, because Fishmen are biological superior, quote unquote, that makes them better. Here, they're doing it the other way around, where, again, apologies, but I don't want to get into the whole thing, but just acknowledge that this is not a retcon of Arlong's motivation. any more than what was done in the anime and the manga is a retcon, because it's the actual canon. It's just, it's done in the opposite order. This version of Arlong brings all the talk of the prejudice of the system's imbalance, obviously from the word of mouth of the guy that's terrorizing an entire village. So I don't know if we should trust him, but obviously I'm coming from the perspective of, yeah, I know where this is all going. So it's just the distinction of, he says this now so that we, the audience, in the live action version, understand, oh, okay, so this guy feels that he's been done dirty by the system of the world, so he's retaliating like a crazy extremist. Like you have a couple of these in fiction. Whereas the other version of Arlong has that motivation, but he doesn't explain it to the reader or the audience, to anyone. So instead, from the main character, from our perspective, not knowing the backstory that will come later, he's just an asshole who decides to terrorize the village, so he's the bad guy, and we don't have to worry about any of that moral, racial nuance stuff that does come into play later. And I only bring all of this up, not only to be a rambling idiot, but to acknowledge that it's debatable which version is better. Because, having him, Arlong, be the voice of the system is broken, prejudice is real, kinda doesn't work, considering he's an a-hole and horrible person. Even if he's the victim of prejudice, he just turned into an asshole. It's that whole problem where it's if you have to, it's hard to convey the message of prejudice, stigma, and racial bias from the guy who learned all the wrong lessons from it. Which is, again, why in the other versions we end up getting it from a completely different source. Someone who has none of the baggage of, hey, remember this guy who tortured and terrorized one of our crewmates, one of the people we like, But, and again, in the same vein, you could argue that the other version of the story, deliberately or not, I don't know what Oda's thought process was, but the other versions don't touch the racial prejudice stuff with a 10-foot pole until way later in the series. It takes a long time to get to this in the other version. So, it's that issue of, if you bring up the racial prejudice stuff, maybe it would have been better to leave it for later, like the other version does. But again, since we know that this stuff is canon, and is the part of the backstory that is supposed to be eventually happen, the live action creators decided, no, yeah, we're just gonna have Arlong be a bit more obvious about his motivation now, because otherwise it doesn't mesh with the rest of the setting. Again, at the cost of trying to give nuance to a character that really never had it in the original. So, along with the other rambling thoughts, change from the added part that I do like is the addition of Buggy. Having him decapitated head, just adding commentary to, and knowing the Straw Hats is a very nice touch. And I appreciate that they don't just have him open his gob in every scene and in every conversation. Even if he's supposed to be there, they don't feel the need to have him comment on everything that happened. It would have been very, very awkward and arguably bad to have him put his nose into the Nami backstory and the other stuff. Adding again to the list of changes that may or may not work, but I don't know. The choice to have Luffy and Zoro actually listen to Nami's backstory is an obvious intentional difference. In the other version, it's a matter of character that Luffy and Zoro decide, yeah, I'm just not interested in hearing the backstory. Luffy just walks off and Zoro claims he's gonna listen, and then he just falls asleep right next to the rest. Versus here, where it's obviously not that. They actually bothered to listen. So it's already an intentional difference. As with the other parts. They decided, okay, no, this version of Luffy and Zoro need to be a bit more upfront and a bit more curious about characters. There's obviously it's a matter of presentation. With everything else, the show has to work with a faster pace. It has to work with a much more, you can argue nuance and details and stuff, but it's harder to do that when you have half an hour to do something that the other versions have like 5 hours to get across it. Again, that's not an excuse, it's a cause. Like, obviously the argument can be easily levied that, well then, don't do it in half an hour. But my point is simply that by having the live action version has to work with the pacing that it chooses to work, whether it justifies it or not. The point is, because it has to do that, it therefore can't rely on things like, okay, in 50 to 100 chapters, in the accumulation of this character's reactions and responses to certain events, you can clearly understand that, yes, they care and they're motivated, but they express that in... They can't do that if they don't have the same length to equivalate present the emotion. So instead, they're like, okay, no. What things do we need to keep for this character? What's absolutely crucial? What parts of their personality should we keep for consistency's sake, and what parts can we afford to change in order to better convey this version of the story? If the characters... And it's the same reason why Luffy is much more upfront about his motivations and sort of like his mental justification for things. He does that in the other versions, but he's much more direct here. A, because people confront him with it way more here, immediately, and B, because of what I just said. They can't just rely on, okay, it's okay, in 50 chapters from now, 50 anime episodes from now, the audience, and by extension the characters, will understand that the reason Luffy does or doesn't do X is because they can't do that, because they're not gonna have... for every 5 examples the other versions can call to, this one has 1 or 2. And again, it ends up becoming a matter of what scenes are absolutely crucial from the perspective of the creator. What scenes do we need to make sure we keep so that this person's best personality traits or most important personality traits get across to the fans and to the viewer? And what can we afford to leave at the chopping block? So you get stuff like, okay, let's actually listen to the backstory, because I need to understand why my crewmate isn't here. Whereas the other version could afford to be like, yeah, no, I don't care. Because in the anime and in the manga, there's 4 other scenes that happened that, they can't do here, or didn't do. That obviously tell you, yeah, okay, I don't know what Nami's deal is, but she did this, she didn't do this, she acted like this, even though she said this. So put all those together and boom, this is Nami's motivation. I don't need her backstory to explain that for the character. For us, we get both best of both worlds. We got the backstory and we get the different scenes that the characters feed off of. Again, it's a matter of limited by the amount of episodes, justified or not. The version we are getting is a version that changes many things, not out of necessarily arbitrary whimsy, but because they need to be much more precise with what they're gonna focus on. And add on to that the things that they decide to change because they want to put their own spin on this, and that's the bloody point of doing an adaptation. If you're not gonna change stuff, why the heck did you do a live action version? Well, because it's gonna be exactly the same as the anime and the manga, but different. And so apologies if I hopefully haven't ran around the same circle narratively as I have clearly done physically. I am so lost right now. Okay, so back to the actual episode. The added stuff with Arlong sets up this actual grudge match. He's getting ready to burn down the village for basically, I guess he realized Nami wasn't gonna pay him any money, and that place wasn't gonna pay him up any more money, after they already missed their quota twice. So he decided, now we're just gonna make an example of the place, burn it. Then, with the added part of, we know Garp is gonna catch up there, or he's on his way. So there's two possibilities. That's not true. There's three. One, he gets there during the fight, so he ends up helping. B, he gets there right after the fight, and the Straw Hats have to hightail it there, very quickly. It's going to be a dramatic, running away sequence right at the end, with maybe, some last-minute, dialogue between him and Luffy. And possibly Kobe. He also might have a fun line to say to Luffy. And I guess the last possible option is they get there after the Straw Hats have already finished everything and they've already left. If I had to pick one, I'd probably pick the first or second option there. I want them to actually interact with each other, but I also don't know if I want them to get in on the fight, because that might take away from the Straw Hats themselves having to fight all the fishmen. Obviously, especially since we don't get as many action scenes with, again, the limit of time. We're not going to get that many actions. So it's the last episode. I would like to see the Straw Hats working as a team and just absolutely beating up a bunch of people. It's going to be okay as far as the live action goes, but hey, you gotta do something, right? Is this a fighting series? Okay, so, and no, I think that's everything. The flashback's pretty much the same. Again, I don't know why they changed the stuff with her sister, and they keep up the details. Arlong's a lot more obvious about his motivation. May or may not work for his character, given the length and the way this version of him always gets executed gets presented. I don't mean that word in the end. Gets presented, and the scene with, overall, I say the stuff with Nami still, the flashbacks tend to be the most accurate stuff so far. They stick pretty close to the original, and in Nami's case, the only thing they really shifted was a few lines here and there, who said what. But yeah, sorry, I just heard the dog. But yeah, and that's my thought on this. Again, as with everything, hopefully we'll see how the last episode, if they're able to. I have actually been enjoying the live action for the most part, so hopefully they'll be able to nail the ending and end it on a really strong note. And we'll see where it goes from there. I'm not going to patch on more on. We'll save that for the next episode. But that's been me. Thanks for listening. Hope to see you in future videos. I mentioned in the last one, I'm trying to use a new mic. Try to see if I can improve the audio on these videos. Let me know if anybody minds, if this is better, worse than the other recordings I've done in the past. Thanks for listening regardless. Thank you all. Have a pleasant day or evening.